Today we will do a quick interview for a group project for my elective Psychology of Peace, and I want to ask you a few questions from a Vietnamese perspective.
Firstly, I want to ask you who you are, where you grew up, and if the Vietnamese War was present at all during your time of growing up.
Yes, so my name is Linh Nguyen and my hometown is Vietnam. I'm born and raised in the capital of Vietnam, which is Hanoi. And well, yes, a part of my city did get destroyed during the Vietnam War. But no, I did not present. I wasn't born during the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was like 1955 to 1975, and I was born in 1999. So that was like roughly 20 years later.
But was the Vietnamese War? I know that you call it the American War, right? Is that correct, or is this an incorrect information?
We call it. I think it's definitely a controversial term to be say. Because I attending American education ever since I was a kid, and it's always framed my country war as in the Vietnam War. But for us, in the Vietnamese literatures, it's always framed as the war goes against American. It's American war, so it's always the two sides of the matter.
Was it, what I meant with present, was it present in national history, in educational systems, or through memorials, for example? Do people still talk about it, or is it a distant topic?
Yes, indeed, actually. I'm trying to find you the word for it. Because technically we don't just say American war, we say the resistance war against the US. That's the terminology that we use. So every single textbook, the historical textbook when you was a kid, like elementary school, you start learning about history starting grade 3, all the way until university in Vietnam. So we keep, every single generation keep reminded about the resistance war against the US. So it's still a topic that we talk about until today. And Vietnam has been colonized for 1,000 years, and we only been independent for roughly 70 years, so just like an age of a grandma. So it's actually important for every single student, every single generation to be reminded of, here's the war that we've been suffering through. So, the government does a great job on that. From education-wise, from TV, from like the shows and performance on the stage, or the poem, or any creative art, it's always reminded back, this is what happened during the resistance war against the US.
Okay, thank you. I will ask more questions on that. So, how is the war taught in schools in Vietnam, or at least in the school you attended?
I think I will send you some follow-up materials for your references later. I would say, roughly though, because I only spent elementary school in Vietnam, but based on those 8 years I remember, we got reminded about how it was a division between the North and the South of Vietnam, and it was a passion of Ho Chi Minh and the soldiers that tried to unite the two parts of the country together. It is a desire to make sure our people can be united at one. And then the history focused more about how here's the heroine, here's the hero, here's the historical figures, the general commanders, who the people who actually lead the war, and how many stories the people who sacrificed and the reason stories of them travel for months to make it to the south, or how the Vietnamese soldiers, including women and men, serve as secretive operation under the ground. They live under the ground for years until they can actually find the right moment to tackle American soldiers. So it's all about the stories how we were resilient, the stories how we sacrificed, the stories how people as a Vietnamese stand together as one to make sure we can unite the two parts of the country together. So we barely speak from the side of America.
And that's interesting. So in the US, the anti-war movement became very large in public. And
yes.
How do you ever speak about that, about the resistance and the protest culture in the US during that time?
Well, I only knew about that when I started attending American high school. That when I was aware, Martin Luther King was actually the one that was super vocal back then about the Vietnam War, and there was a protest on the street from New York to Washington D.C., all different cities at Housewife, and a lot of people came out and then started protesting that they should stop the Vietnam War. Only at that moment when attending American high school that I was aware that those kind of protests exist.
So it's not a topic people speak about in Vietnam?
It wasn't later on in university during my time now, as for the past few years when social media became more prominent, right? And we started producing more historical movies. And that was the moment there's more clips and more videos that show us here's what protests happened in the US. And then the Vietnam War movies that have been produced recently, they start showing the two sides of the interviews.
You mentioned that the government is doing a good job in in talking about the history. Do you think Vietnamese media presents the war in a way that encourages a specific emotional or moral perspective, or is it well grounded?
Interesting question for sure. I will send you a few movies I've been watching recently. Because there was interesting tactic, but I also say is a good cultural promotion for the Vietnamese people is that in the middle of all several countries are having civil war and conflict, Vietnam actually invested a decent amount of money to produce a lot of historical movies and nationalistic movies to make sure like we are aware about what happened in the history. Just keep reminding the generation about here's the cost and the suffer that happened during the war. Just reminded us to actually appreciate the peace that we had. And that's kind of like the success because the movie that we watch is authentically, not sure how authentic it is because I wasn't there during the war, but to see like such a perspective of here's an entire female operation of Vietnamese women living under the ground for years so that they can build a strategy and tackle American soldiers when they came. The stories of the people who are still alive until today, the story they witnessed, and the way they tried to relive that moment to demonstrate in the movie. For me, it was so authentic, and for me, it's like the war is right there. It's reminded me there's so much loss and so much mourning, and it's definitely emotional provoking in those kind of movies when we watch. And because of it, we start to gradually appreciate more the power of peace that we have right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a beautiful part because it's actually being covered everyone in the news in Vietnam. Children are encouraged to bring their grandchildren. Children are encouraged if they know any veteran to go to the movie with them, so that they can really watch the movie together. And then we also have like a parade. It's actually the biggest parade for the past 10 years in Vietnam, and the parade just happened last September. And during this parade, everyone from across the country gonna travel to the city, and all the veterans gonna get fly in. So the entire across 3 different generations gonna be there together in one parade, so they can celebrate the victory of Vietnam War and celebrate the veteran who sacrificed for it.
Wow, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this information. Please send me the follow-up documents. I would like to learn more about it. Let's switch a little bit the topic. How are public protests viewed in Vietnam today? Are they encouraged? Are they allowed? Are they happening?
Well, that is interesting to say because the thing is, I do notice like the sentiment the past few years, every time there's like historical movie come out, there's a huge support and participation from the youth.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of compliment about those movies, and there's a lot of stories people share about how they appreciate their grandma, grandfather, or the great generation that contributed to the war. So it's usually a positive stories of how we are living, carrying out the legacy that our parent and grandparents left behind for us. And therefore, there's not, I would say, barely a word that mentioned protests. Even though we are definitely liberalized, most of the generation, at least from my generation, we all study abroad, or we all being exposed to social media across different countries. So we do aware about what protest is, but we spend majority of the time talking about different country politics and what happened in those country protests. But in Vietnam, we don't really talk about protests here. Because it's not because we banned or forbidden, it's just that we don't feel the need to.
Interesting. So when I lived in Thailand, I watched protests in Bangkok, and they are heavily restricted and people are being imprisoned for protesting. So you don't have this culture of mass protest in Vietnam, huh? Interesting.
Yeah, there wasn't a culture of mass protest. That is for sure, because I know even though there's like some conflicts about how they agree about land, or how they distribute land, for example, right? It's happened in every country when like they have disagreement how they land dispute, kind of those kind of matter. But usually there hasn't been like a big protest, like a small protest, like a small group of like farmers come out and ask like this is not the fair way to distribute land. But it usually get resolved like after a week or two. One thing that the government commit to do, or at least they say they commit to do, is that they will be transparent on the news. Because every single crisis happens, that's always posted on the government page, and people will start jumping and then start commenting, and then they will be feedback right away from the government the next day saying like acknowledge this ABCD. So there has been like a super interactive communication among the government agency and the citizen. And even like just a small scandal happened in like suburban area, if people post about it and get viral on the news, the government will immediately jump in and then represent here's what they did to tackle the issues.
Wow, that sounds very positive.
It sounds very positive, and it can be a little bit skeptical in a way, is it true or not? But generally, those kind of protests hasn't been, at least to my knowledge, that wasn't there, because protest is not about our culture.
Very interesting. Do you think there still exists anti-American sentiments among the Vietnamese population because of the history?
It's the opposite side. Vietnam is actually the walking example among all the countries that has been, I would say, colonized by the US. So we try to have strategic diplomacy relationship with the US, with China, with Russia. So we try to maintain a neutral position with all the countries around us. Even to France, the one who colonized us, even to China, the one who colonized us, even the US who colonized us too. We call it the bamboo strategy. The bamboo, as in like you can tell in different way, but you still stand still.
Ooh, I never heard of it.
Yep, we call it like the bamboo strategic diplomacy.
Oh, this is so. You make Vietnam sound more and more savory to come and visit.
Yeah, I mean, like, why not? But I mean, like, I would just say that the country does suffer severely because how we were being ignored about climate change. So now people are suffering for all the country to the flood. There's like a little heart people died just now from the flood, but
I'm
that's
sorry.
like definitely the area I'm proving the government to tackle on. But whether anti-American, hell no, just because we have such a strong endowment toward American. So the white supremacy is still there, deeply rooted from generation to another generation.
Because our group project is on groupthink and how groupthink can create hostility towards other groups. What you are describing sounds like the exact opposite. How do you think your country managed that?
It's because I would say collective thinking of how we are educated and saying like peace is more important than war, and how if we receive any support from America, that means they are helping us to rebuild our country after the war. So the question of who should be responsible for the Vietnam War is super blurry. It's such a thin line, no one can talk about it. But it's more instead how like the US is helping us recovering from the war. They are sending aid over to make sure we build the countries, and here's the resources we have from America, or we now have US as one of our top 5 strategic partners for export and import. So US also contribute to the Vietnamese economy. We appreciate for the sentiment and the support. So it's always like a positive phrase of like, we are now focusing more on strategic relationship after the war. It doesn't matter who caused the war, but it's more about how we can get the resources from America. How can we learn from America? How can we actually be acknowledged by American?
So you had a strategic focus on reconciliation, huh?
It's every single news, every single stories, and even when I was a kid back in elementary school, America always framed as a beautiful American dream, and how so peoples always has the best resource, best education, and always the one that would know what to do, and we should learn from them. It's always framed us as in we are less superior position, and we should learn from our white partners.
Okay, wow, thank you so much, Lynn. That was unexpected.
Yeah,
and I'm really happy to hear that. I really did not expect it. It's the first time I'm hearing that. Usually, the countries I know do it differently. So thanks for this very valuable example.
Thank you. And if you check the statistics, American expat and American veteran now move to Vietnam.
Ooh.
Yep. And there's a lot of list stories and news got published about how American veteran fly back to Vietnam, meet the victim that they used to expose during the war, and now they reheal the relationship, and now there's a lifelong friendship among the victim and the colonizers. So they did try to frame it the way that we are now healing.
I will probably study the Vietnamese case. I did not expect to have such an enlightenment today. Thank you so much, Lynn.
No worries. But yes, what they do with the orange agent though is still problematic. I think you should look into it.
Yes, the orange agent was a horrific example of
but they still deny, they still deny responsibility.
Yes. It's similar with the German companies who produce the gas and their lack of responsibility until today.
Yep.
Until today, they are some of the wealthiest companies we have in our country.
Yes, you should check it out because that was the issue that's still going on about how US still refused to send us aid and take responsible on orange agent. Because that was the dark side of it.
Definitely check it out. Thank you so much, Lynn. I stopped the recording now.